The following interview is a Blanchard community production. This is Leadership Unfiltered, Community Conversations, an interview series dedicated to diving into leadership topics relevant to today's world. I'm your host, Sarah Hempel, a community builder, relationship guru, and passionate difference maker. Our aim is to hold a safe space for difficult conversations as we shed light on leadership around the world. So, join us as we dive into Leadership Unfiltered. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 9th episode of Leadership Unfiltered Community Conversations. I'm Sarah, my pronouns are she, her, and this month we are going to talk about Leadify's podcast, Mind the Gap, with Madeleine and Lucy. Today, I'm super excited to be joined by both of the Leadify Mind the Gap podcast hosts, Madeleine Blanchard and Lucy Dannewitz. Lucy is a Gen Z college grad, co-host of the podcast, and next-gen leadership development specialist at Blanchard. With a background in collaborative writing and editing, she's passionate about helping emerging thought leaders share their voices and perspectives on Blanchard's Leadify app. Her work focuses on growth from the inside out, building self-empathy and self-awareness, because she believes leadership starts with leading yourself. Madeleine Blanchard is the chief coaching architect and co-founder of coaching services at Blanchard. A pioneer in the coaching profession since 1989, she brings deep expertise in leadership presence, emotional intelligence, and coaching culture. She's a best-selling author, sought-after speaker, and co-creator of Blanchard's Leadership Coach Certification Program. I am so excited to have you both here today, Madeleine and Lucy. Thank you.
So happy to be here.
Delighted to be here.
Wonderful. Well, let's start off and share a little bit about yourself and kind of your journey to leadership and specifically to Leadify. And at some point, somebody's got to tell us what Leadify is, because I know, but the audience might not.
I'm Lucy, pronouns she, her. I've been with Blanchard for about 2 years now. I actually started before I even graduated college. So I graduated in April of last year. Lots of passion around writing and editing, like Sarah mentioned. And I really kind of stumbled into leadership through my connection with Blanchard. The opportunity just kind of fell on my desk because I knew someone who knew someone, and I said yes. And that turned into 2 years now that I've gotten to spend with Leadify, kind of supporting building up our thought leader program. And so just a little bit of context about what Leadify is. It's really just Blanchard's initiative to equip, empower, and elevate a new generation of leaders. And the main way that we do that is through our Leadify app, which is a beautiful collection of educational content with blogs and articles and videos from the next generation of thought leaders here at Blanchard. And I'm so privileged that I get to actually work with so many of those people and help them develop their voices and their thought leadership and talk about all the things they're passionate about, and do this podcast as well with Mind the Gap.
Awesome, Lucy. Thank you. Yeah, I've had the opportunity to work with you in preparing some pieces for Leadify, and you are just so incredibly talented. So I thank you for helping me be able to share some of my thoughts and passions on Leadify. Mad, do you want to share a little bit about you?
Sure. I love the way you said that you stumbled into leadership, Lucy, because of a friend of a friend. And I think there's two important things in that. I think a lot of people sometimes, I don't know, get upset that opportunities come from people you know. And it's just the way it is. So one of the things when I work with clients, one of the things we always work on is their network of relationships, because all opportunities come from the relationships you have with people out there in the world. And it's not just young people who get upset about that. It's all people. The other thing I loved about the stumbled into the leadership thing is I also stumbled into leadership. I think of myself as an accidental leader. I always had a strange presence that made people automatically think I was in charge. Still today, like in stores, people come up and ask me questions. I'm like, I don't work here. But also because I had ideas and I wanted to do things and make things happen, and I couldn't do it by myself.
Mhm.
So I had to kind of find people who could help me and attract people who knew more than I did. And so I started businesses because I wanted to, because I saw a need and I just ended up having to lead and doing it mostly wrong until, I learned how not to do it. So I think I love how intentional you get to be from the start, Lucy.
Yeah.
I wish I could go back to being in college and knowing what I know now.
Right?
But yeah,
I love.
accidental leader.
Love that.
Yeah. I think that's something we all have in common because I stumbled into it as well as a former educator, and never really thought of myself as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's probably a lot of folks listening that have stumbled into leadership, is what I'm finding. So let's talk about your podcast. So Mad and Lucy Mind the Gap. Can you tell us a little bit about how we came up with that title? What is, if folks haven't listened into your podcast before, what's the premise?
When we first started talking about doing the podcast, because it was Lucy and me, we thought, well, this huge generation gap, right?
Mm-hmm.
Although, of course, the crazy thing is that I still haven't found a gap so big that we haven't been able to navigate it, generation or in any dimension. And we started talking about, the gap between people who are kind of neuronormative versus neurodiverse, and the gap between socioeconomic and educational opportunities, and the gap between people who've never had a mental health crisis in their life and don't know someone who has, which is no one. It's just those are people who don't talk about it, but think they don't know anyone. And people who've, had to put a lot of time and energy and money and resources into managing a mental health challenge. And we just thought, wow, okay, that's a great way to have a lot of really interesting conversations.
Yeah.
So that's where it came from. And then the name of it came from my favorite thing on the London Tube, which is this very nice lady saying, "Mind the gap," when the doors open, and not to fall into the space between the train and the platform. And it turns out we're not the only ones who've had this idea. There are other podcasts with that name, but they don't have Matt and Lucy.
I love it. Oh, so fun. So what's something you just wrapped up your first season, right? Of the podcast. What's something that each of you learned about yourself during season 1 that you maybe didn't expect to learn?
I mean, I can share first for sure. I think the most obvious thing that kind of pops to mind is just I like to think of myself as someone who knows myself pretty well and can kind of trust my intuition in a given moment. And I realized through this process of like actually putting myself in the gap and being the person to try to manage, like, how do we bridge that? Like, I realized I didn't fully trust myself to do that. And I was really afraid of like invalidating someone else's experiences or feelings. And that's like very against like who I am as a person. Like I'm very passionate about making everyone feel included and like they matter. And so I just felt this weight, I guess, of just the importance of what we were doing to the point where it was like almost paralyzing, like it's too important, I can't do it. But I think something that has really been the realization, the turning point for me has just been Mad being perceptive enough to tell that. And she literally said to me, Lucy, you can trust yourself without like, it was totally random. And I realized as soon as she said it, that was exactly what had been holding me back is this fear of like saying or doing the wrong thing. And so I think something that has changed things for me and that I'm hoping to carry into the next season is just a little bit more trust in myself and in my intentions, at least, that I'm showing up to this space hoping to do something positive. And also trusting that even if something does happen, even if it doesn't go as I would hope it would, like I trust myself enough to make things right and to rebuild that trust if it's needed. So, yeah, Mad, that was really like a powerful thing that you had said to me that I didn't even know that I was struggling with.
That makes me so happy.
I love that.
I love that. I think the thing that's made this so fun for me is, well, first of all, getting to know Lucy. And I'm already have a great relationship with Lucy's mom, which is kind of how I met Lucy. And it's just like, it feels like a family affair. I know there are other members of the family, but also our producer, Lara. I feel like having the opportunity to partner with new people to create something is always, I start a lot of things and they don't always work out. So having the energy behind this and the commitment, that's just been such a delight. And the other thing I realize is I spend my days listening to people. In a leadership position, I listen. As a coach, I listen. I might have opinions, but there's usually no space for whatever those might be in my normal day-to-day. So having a forum where it's like, what do I really think about this? And, having the forum where someone might actually care.
Yeah.
It's like, that's fun. It's a rare opportunity.
Yeah, you have a captive audience and they're excited to hear what you have to say. And you get to talk about things that you're passionate about,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So thinking about you all mentioned the generation gap. How has your partnership with each other evolved through co-hosting this podcast?
I think the things that comes to mind for me is that, when we set out to like do this task of minding the gap in practice, like I think I had hoped that it would be a little more effortless, like the more that we did it, which it kind of is, but I also realized that, when you bring any two people in a room, no matter how much they care for or respect each other, like you have to learn each other's communication styles and you have to learn to meet each other where you are. So I think that's something that Matt and I have done really well just in the time that we've been recording together. Like when we first started, I definitely was a lot quieter and more reserved, and I still probably am naturally more that way. But I think she's done a really great job of like recognizing when she wants to create space for me and pull me in. And I, on the other hand, have gotten a lot better, I hope, at speaking up and voicing what I'm thinking, even if it's not fully formed. And so just kind of being aware of like how much space we naturally take up in the room. I mean, Mad shared that, people go up to her in the store and like ask her for questions or directions or whatever, because she's just that kind of amazing person. And so I think something that I've learned and appreciated is just that, when you're in that space with somebody else and sharing it and really want it to be mutual and balanced, like it does take effort, but that doesn't mean like there's anything wrong with it. Like it actually, I think, makes it a lot richer when we do get to have that exchange because we know that we both showed up and did what we needed to do in order to have that kind of conversation.
I love that.
Yeah. I love that you say it's an amazing quality. The
I
word
think so.
extra was coined for people like me. The first time I heard it, I was like, oh, that's me. Yeah. Too loud, too much, too fast, too fill in the blank. You know, my entire childhood, all I ever heard was shh. Don't be so dramatic. Shh. Shh. Tone it down. Can't you tone it down? And, you know, I can, but it does take effort. And, you know, my sister's a lot like me. And so was our mother, weirdly. We all kind of came in with this DNA that is like on the Strengths Finder. One of my top strengths is self-assurance. And I had a dear friend who has a PhD and is unbelievably successful. And she's like, oh, how do you get that? I'm like, I have no idea. There's no earthly reason that I should have that.
Born
And
this way.
I did learn the hard way, right?
Yeah.
Because I was like, what could go wrong? It turns out plenty. That self-assurance has often been misplaced. But my sister and I have this joke, that there's certain people who make us feel like Phyllis Diller. Now I'm dating myself. So the next generation after Phyllis Diller would have been Joan Rivers. And what would your generations be, Lucy? The loud, tell it like it is, even if it's offensive, comedian type people. Well, everyone has
Chelsea
their
Handler.
perfect. That quiet people like almost bring that out in me. So I've had to make sure that doesn't happen. And I have to, I just have to behave.
You don't have to behave for me, man.
Oh, I do, Lucy.
I've listened to plenty of the podcasts and I don't even know that I would call it behaving. Like, it's just, you're having fun and you're creating this psychologically safe environment because the people, I was a guest once on the podcast and some of the others I listened to the guests, they're sharing things that are very vulnerable most often. And, they're saying the quiet part out loud, the things that aren't often talked about. And you create this space between both of you where, as a guest, like, I felt heard, I felt seen, and I felt like I could share my story. But there was a little bit of lightness that, like, I didn't, some of it, some of the trauma that I talked about could have gotten very dark and not a big, fun, uplifting podcast. And you still were able to put that spin on it, where I hope that people walked away hearing the message, right? That was intended. So kudos to both of you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Good.
Yeah. So thinking about saying the quiet part out loud, we've talked about you're getting to tell the story and talk to people about something that you're passionate about. Was there a moment or a particular episode where you thought, I love that I'm doing this. This is what people really need to hear?
I feel like we've had a little bit of that in every episode.
I would agree.
Because we're tackling these, these hard topics.
Right. I think it speaks to the representation. Like,
I do worry that we're playing a little bit into the echo chamber. People talk about the echo chamber where we seek confirmation for what we believe to be true already, and that the people who are going to listen to the podcast aren't the people who need to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that the people who do need to hear it won't even find it because it won't show up on their radar.
Right.
So that is one. It's like, are we really going to be able to make an impact? Just because of the way algorithms work and social media works. And on the other hand, do I want people who disagree with us violently to find us? Not really.
Right.
Because I don't want to see those comments
Mm-hmm.
either. I don't want to be the target or the recipient of hate.
Mm-hmm.
Am
I
I
think it's
alone that way?
it's a really important point that you bring up though. And I think aside from social media and algorithms, the value in word of mouth and sharing things. I know the episode about pride that I was a guest on, that was something that I shared with, some people that maybe hadn't heard my story or weren't as familiar with it, but I would count them among my friends and just kind of shared that because it was a way of sharing my story without having to sit in the mud and the muck and share it verbally again myself.
Yeah.
And some of the feedback that I got from sharing that was like, oh, I didn't know that, explain some things, or I have some questions, or it just opened up conversation for me.
Mhm.
And so I think there's power in your podcast in sharing a message that gives people a way to share it without having to come up with the right words themselves. And as our producer for the podcast, Laura, said to me one time when I was asking for some advice, they said, you don't always have to have the right words to say, but if you can find someone that has said them and you elevate and lift those voices up, that can be just as powerful. And so that's kind of what I think about your podcast and some of the other episodes that I've listened to, and sharing. Yeah, I agree with these thoughts. I agree with what I've heard, and now I want to share that and elevate that voice some more.
I love that, Sarah. I hadn't thought of it that way. That it can be powerful as a tool for others. Yeah. What do you think, Lucy?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think when I came into this experience, that was kind of what was at the forefront for me is like, how do I be a platform and a safe space for other people to articulate their story in a way that feels honoring and like it fully represents what they want to express and is put in a way that they can then use it and cherish it however they like. I think there's so much power in that, no matter kind of what the format is. I mean, when we kind of unlock our voice in that way and we're able to tell our story, um, like through our own agency and power, like I don't know, I think that can be kind of identity shifting even. You feel like you're in the driver's seat of your own narrative, and I just love that. And all I have to do is ask questions.
Yeah, right. You say all you have to do, but you put a lot of thought and a lot of heart into those questions
True,
to
true.
help guide where the story goes and give that individual or that group of people the opportunity to share their story. So, yeah.
I love that, Lucy, because I think, we often hear you have to change the narrative, or, you have to be the hero of your own story, or, there's a lot of conversation about narrative, but I'm not sure there's a lot of direction and support for how to do that.
Mhm.
So I do think hearing other people's stories and other people's voices can help people to do that. I love that. That's helpful. That's helpful to me.
Awesome. Well, season 1's wrapped up. Season 2 is ahead of us. Is there anything you didn't get to say in season 1 that you really want to bring forward into season 2?
I don't think it's so much about at least what I have to say as making space for others to say what they need to say. So I'm just, it's the top. It's more like, to me, it's more like, what are the topics?
Yeah.
That I think need exploring.
Is there anything that comes to mind? Do we get a sneak peek inside Mad and Lucy season 2?
Well, but I'd like to hear from Lucy
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in the same boat. I think we were able to learn a lot, I think, through these initial conversations. A lot of internal work, I think, between the both of us and just reflecting on what our role really is in this space and how do we kind of live up to kind of the expectation that we set for ourselves. What does it look like to embody this practice of minding the gap? Like, I don't know, just a lot of like, I think, back end kind of ways of thinking. And some amazing guests that have been there to help us kind of work through that in real time. But I'd love to kind of continue to see us push that forward, to continue that internal reflection work because I think if there's anything I would want to emphasize, it's that it's effort. Like all of it is effort. Thinking about the topics, thinking about how to approach the topics, who to talk to about the topics, and then how to actually handle the conversation. Like there's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of places where, it could easily go south. I think there's a lot of risk involved in kind of being a part of something like this willingly over and over again.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I would just like to point that out that it's not effortless. So if in like your own life, like it doesn't feel effortless, like you're not alone, like everybody feels that way. And I hope we're continually a space where we're kind of exemplifying like what it looks like to kind of struggle through that and try to figure it out in real time, including figuring out what are those important topics we want to continue to dig into, and who do we want to bring to the table. I know for me, I'd love to hear from more kind of young leaders who are kind of figuring it out in real time, which comes from my personal interest just in like trying to figure it out for myself. I want to see what other people that are kind of in the same boat as me are kind of doing to work through those things. But yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. So here's a topic that talk about a huge gap. And I have no idea how we might even go about this. But boy, there's a big gap out there between the people who have a perception that climate change is happening and that we humans and human activity is contributing to it, and people who don't. And it's become a political issue.
Right.
And it's become politically divisive, or is it divisive? Pop quiz. What do you think? How do you pronounce
Divisive?
that? I don't know. Divisive. But I mean, there are a lot of political issues, right? That are issues that are politically divisive, where there are huge gaps.
Right.
And I'm just sitting here like, I try not to watch it too closely because I make myself cuckoo. But I'm just like, how is it possible that we are all having the same experiences and interpreting them so differently out there in the world?
Yeah.
And what can Lucy and Lara and I do to help close those gaps?
Right.
I'm honestly, waiting for like inspiration.
Yeah. It's a
But
big question.
that's where I go in my head.
Love
I had
that.
a young person ask me over dinner, this summer, a guest of my nephew. And I was so impressed actually, because he was like, okay, number one issue, if you could wave a magic wand and do something, make a positive difference on that, what is the one issue you would tackle? And I shared mine. And he was like, oh, huh. Okay, yeah, that's actually valid. I was like, okay, good, thanks. And I said, well, what's yours? And he said, climate change. And, it's like, tell me more. And he got into it, and I was like, okay, really interesting. I mean, it super, super concerns him.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
mine's
there's
definitely a
definitely.
topic that's wildly divisive. So.
Yes. Yeah, there's definitely a gap out there right now between people.
Gaps aplenty and growing.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely growing apart, not together. But I think you'll have some good content for season 2. Even if you stay away from these really hugely polarizing things, but even just approaching how to have these conversations so that you can start to mind the gap, right? Like, because I think myself included, I do steer away from the really hot topic, big divisive conversations. But when I find someone that maybe the gap isn't quite so large between them and myself, I feel a little bit more brave to lean in with curiosity and ask some questions to try to understand, like, how are we both living in the same time and space, and yet we see things so differently. And I think we need more curiosity out there.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, well, as we wrap up, I would love to know if bridging the gap, minding the gap, has that changed from when you first started at the beginning of season 1 to where you are today?
I think I would say yes for myself. I think I had assumed that I would be able to pull myself out of it and just create a safe space for other people and that would be enough. But something that I know just through in my work with writing, especially, is that like these spaces are never neutral. And the people who occupy them, we bring our lived experiences with us, myself included. We bring our biases, we bring our limited frame of reference for good or for whatever else. Like, and so I think the real work and the real challenge for myself, I think, is accepting that I bring all of that with me in every space I go into. Uh,
Mhm.
and that there's even more weight to that when I occupy these spaces where I'm amplifying voices of experiences that are entirely different from my own. And
Mhm.
I don't know, just thinking about that, that's not a bad thing, that my
Yeah.
experience is different, and that it's actually probably more useful for the people listening to just be honest about that and explore
Mhm.
it in a meaningful way, rather than try to bury it or just diminish myself in any way. Like I would hope my experience, even if it's not everyone's, it's an entry point into someone's, a way
Yeah.
of thinking about the topic other than someone who maybe relates to the experience directly. So just trying to think about that in a little bit of a different way.
Mhm.
What do you think, Matt?
I could listen to you talk all day, Lucy. That's so well said. I, I don't think anything has changed for me. I think we're on the right track. I love the direction we're going in.
Mhm.
I think I just want to keep it going. I'm fascinated all day, every day by the human condition.
Mhm.
and the things people can do, people do, people don't do, people choose one way or another, that makes it better or makes it worse. There's so much suffering, and it's, it's painful. It's painful, the suffering. So I feel like if we keep going and we can do even the smallest thing that we aren't even aware of, right? That might reduce suffering for somebody else. It's all good.
Yeah.
Love that.
I love that. You bring hope. You bring a safe space for people to see and hear themselves represented. And if not, to see and hear other perspectives that they can maybe, like you said, Lucy, maybe relate to, or maybe that's an opening into starting to understand that there are other lived experiences and perspectives besides our own. Fantastic. This has been such a fun conversation, and I'm super excited for season 2 to launch next year. As we wrap up today's episode on Leadership Unfiltered, I just want to say thank you, both Mad and Lucy, for joining me today. It was lots of fun.
Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely. And to everyone listening in, I want to say thank you so much for joining in and sharing this time with us. And until next time, I hope to see you in the Blanchard community, where we will unpack more conversations around leadership. Thank you. Want fast, flexible leadership development? Check out the Blanchard Leadership Marketplace. On-demand courses, a fabulous subscription pass, and 15% off your first order because you are a Leadership Unfiltered listener. Just use code COMMUNITY15. Go to store.blanchard.com and start growing today.